Welcome back. Now, you may remember that we had an interview with Michael Meharry with the 10th Amendment Center, their efforts to constrain the NSA at the state level. And we see that there's a bill that's been introduced in Washington that has bipartisan support, as well as the ACLU joining in. So we have support from a broad spectrum of people. And we're going to talk to one of those co-sponsors. He's Matt Shea. He's a Spokane Valley representative in the state of Washington, District 4. Welcome, Representative Shea. Thank you for talking to us. Now, I guess to start this, I want to give you the guy who seems to have taken upon himself to be the poster child in favor of defending the NSA, and that's Mark Andreessen, I believe is the way his name's pronounced. He was the founder of Netscape. He's a big Silicon Valley venture capitalist, and he said, hey, we're spending billions of dollars and these guys weren't spying. We'd be concerned about that. And he says, isn't there a real discussion to be had that's not Flashpoint? The NSA is evil, cartoonish. Well, tell us your concerns.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And second, secretly spying on your own citizens without due process is the very essence of tyranny.
Yes.
That is just incredible we're even having this conversation today. Clearly, the federal government, the three branches of the federal government, aren't going to restrain themselves. Therefore, it's left up to the states to restrain the federal government.
And tell us the legislation that you're the co-sponsor on that's been introduced in Washington, because this is the first time that we've seen anything like this put in a state where the NSA actually has a large presence like they do in the Yakima facility.
Well, first of all, the federal government is an agent of the states. I mean, the states are what created the federal government, so it's left up to the states sometimes to restrain the federal government when they clearly aren't going to. House Bill 2272, the Fourth Amendment Protection Act, does 5 things. First of all, it stops any support or assistance for any state agency to the federal government regarding spying on our own citizens without a warrant. The second thing that it does is it deprives the federal government of any ability regarding contracts and regarding the state funding or using any funds, assets, anything like that to help the federal government in that spying as well. And then next, it deprives local governments of grant money to do the same thing. So that's the first 4 parts of it. The 5th part is nobody can use any illegally obtained evidence. We define that as evidence obtained without any sort of a warrant, which is what the NSA has been doing, monitoring our emails, monitoring our phone calls, monitoring what we buy, because that preserves the integrity of the system. If we allow that illegal evidence in, we're going to get a ton of court cases thrown out, number one. And number two, we shouldn't be doing that anyway. That's what the whole reason behind the Fourth Amendment is. General warrants were condemned by our founding fathers, most notably James Otis, and among many others. John Adams is another example, because King George III's general warrants basically said that you could go in anytime, anywhere, for any reason, and search somebody's house, their effects, their papers. The Fourth Amendment's very clear that we are free, and our effects, our affairs, our papers should be secure from unreasonable search and seizure. And here in Washington State, Article 1, Section 7 of our state constitution goes even farther and says that we should be secure in our privacy in our affairs.
Yes.
So it uses even stronger language.
And when we talked to William Binney, he was very clear that according to internal guidelines, the NSA is maintaining that they haven't really seized your data or taken your data or searched your data as long as they keep it and as long as they hold it, and they can even turn it over to the FBI or Homeland Security, and they still don't consider that they have taken it. They're playing those kind of semantic games with us, and your bill specifically addresses metadata, because that's another semantic game they want to play with us.
It absolutely is, and in fact, it goes the other way, too, with state agencies, most notably the Washington State Patrol, in conjunction with the Fusion Center here in Washington, where they are working to monitor citizens. Most recently, the Million Mask March that happened here in Washington State, they monitored that, and then they went and shared that information with the federal government. This bill would put a stop to that and imposes 3 specific penalties. The first is if you are a government agent at the state level or below and you violate the provisions of this bill, you lose your job. And I think that's a very important incentive to actually protect people's constitutional rights. The second is if you're a company that is contracted out with the state and you're involved in this in any way, you lose your contract and you can never get one back with the state of Washington. And then lastly, the third thing is if you're someone that has violated the provisions of this bill, you are liable for a gross misdemeanor, so a criminal penalty, which I think is another critical component of the penalty phase. And then last but not least, we have a provision in there that gives the people a cause of action to actually enforce this. So we're putting the power back in the hands of the people to actually enforce the provisions of this bill and sue where they need to make sure that their Fourth Amendment rights and the rights that they enjoy and are protected with the rest of the Constitution can be enforced at the local level and by the individual.
It's a great bill. Like you just pointed out, you make sure that the people have standing in a lawsuit. You've got clear prohibitions. You get around some of these semantics that they've put out there, as well as really having teeth in it. What are the chances of this getting passed? I know right now you've got some bipartisan sponsorship there.
We do have bipartisan sponsorship, and that's one of the key things, that the issues of freedom and liberty, they cross party lines. And so we do have bipartisan sponsorship. We've been working with both the 10th Amendment Center and the ACLU to make sure that we get appropriate pressure put on to get this a hearing. It is currently in the Judiciary Committee in the House of Representatives. The chairwoman is Lori Jenkins, and we have a phone number for her for your viewers and listeners so that they can actually call and help put some pressure on her to give this thing a hearing. And yeah,
let's get that out. We wanted to do everything we can to help get this passed. What's her phone number?
Absolutely. Her phone number is 360-786-7930, 786-7930, and it's Lori, L-A-U-R-I-E Jenkins, Jinkins at leg.wa.gov.
Well, that's great. Is there any other information that you can give the audience that things that they could do to help move this along? Because this is very important, because other bills have been introduced in other states, but in some places where they don't really have a facility, an NSA facility like they do at Yakima, this could really have some real effect there.
Absolutely. I mean, if we don't get this issue right, I mean, where are we secure? Where are we truly free? If they can monitor our emails, they can monitor everything that we do on the internet, they can monitor what we watch, they can monitor what we listen to, they can monitor what we buy, we're going to end up doing is self-censoring, which is the worst kind of tyranny.
Yes.
Self-censoring and just thinking, well, I got to watch everything I say, I've got to watch everything I buy. That's why this is so important, and that's why we've got to get this right, and that's why the state ultimately has to step in between the federal government and the people and protect the people's constitutional rights, especially if the three branches of the federal government are not going to.
That's right. Now, tomorrow we've got a speech from Obama. He's got a panel, a White House panel that's going to make some proposals. I don't really expect to see much coming out of that. I think Rand Paul doesn't expect to see much coming out of that either. He's calling it the fox guarding the hen house. So this is really where we need to put our efforts, at the state level, stopping this at the state level, I believe.
I absolutely agree. And, you know, I hear some people say, well, Matt, this is going to interfere with national security. This is going to put our national security in jeopardy. And you know what? National security is not an excuse to violate the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of Washington State. Both of those constitutions were written in crisis for crisis. And I think we need to remember that and get away from all this emotional push to do that. My wife is from Ukraine, fled communist Ukraine, and came over here to this country precisely because she didn't want to be monitored for being a Christian, monitored for being pro-life, monitored for being pro-gun, monitored for being pro-liberty and pro-freedom. And so I think this is one of those key things where we can actually learn from those folks that fled communism and fled tyranny, and we can make sure it doesn't happen here in the United States of America.
Well, thank you very much, Representative Shea. We'll be watching this and seeing what happens. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me on, and this bill is part of what we call the Freedom Agenda Washington. The globalists have their agenda for tyranny. We have our agenda for freedom, and you can go on Facebook and check out Freedom Agenda Washington. That's where we post about all our bills going forward.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Bye-bye. Well, as Representative Shea said, I can't believe we're having this discussion. This is a discussion we've been having in InfoWars for quite some time. It's a reality that's been around for quite some time. Finally, it's coming to light, so finally we can do something about it, and it's great to see that there are state representatives like Representative Shea and others in Washington who are doing something about it. It's a bipartisan effort. But if you want to follow this, and if you want to stay ahead of what's happening and educate yourself and others, a great way to do that is to get a subscription to Prison Planet TV. 10 other people can watch at the same time that you're watching. It's a great way to educate others, to spread the news, and to support this operation.